Here in America, Kia is certainly no stranger to offering small, affordable hatchbacks for budget-minded consumers. Think back, of course, to the original Kia Rio and Rio 5. That was an entry-level subcompact hatchback that was essentially well under $20,000. Well, what if you want a hatchback that's a little bit more substantial and larger versus the Rio? This is where Kia hasn't been playing in that space since 2018 when the old Kia Forte 5 was discontinued. However, for 2026, the company is ready to jump back into that segment with the introduction of this vehicle. This is the 2026 Kia K4 hatchback. It's built off of the same excellent K4 sedan that we tested last year, and just like the four-door sedan, it's offered with a choice of two powertrains, including a more enthusiast-friendly 1.6-liter turbo option. So as you can see, this week, Kia has loaned us the latest 2026 Kia K4 GT Line Turbo hatchback in this sparkling yellow color. And the big question I went answered, has Kia managed to deliver a turbocharged hatchback that can truly go toe-to-toe with the best from Honda, Toyota, and Mazda? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the unique styling details for the hatchback version of the K4, let me go ahead and pop the hood and talk about what's powering this thing. Now, just like the sedan, the base engine remains a naturally aspirated 2-liter that makes around 147 horsepower. However, for around $3,000 more than the regular GT line, you can get this turbo option, which is a much more interesting option for those of you who like to go faster. Now, as you can see, underneath the hood, you're going to find a transverse mounted 1.6-liter double overhead cam gasoline direct injection turbocharged 4-cylinder. This engine has been in production for well over a decade, I believe. Kia has made some improvements to it over the years, but it still makes 190 horsepower and 195 foot-pounds of torque. This engine is certainly a lot more unique in the class because Honda dropped the turbo in the Civic hatchback, of course. You can still get it in the SI, but no longer in the hatch. Toyota only offers a turbo if you guys go for the far more expensive GR Corolla. And then, of course, there's the Mazda 3 hatch, which offers a turbo, but it's a much bigger, more powerful engine that's considerably more expensive. So this engine is certainly kind of a happy medium. It all goes out through an 8-speed conventional torque converter automatic. And sadly, Kia only offers this vehicle with front-wheel drive. A lot of the competitors do offer all-wheel drive, but not Kia, unfortunately. And fuel economy is rated at 26 in the city and 33 on the highway. It has a 12.4-gallon fuel tank, so theoretically, you could do just under 400-ish miles of range on a full tank. Now, Kia doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. The last sedan that we tested took around 6.5 seconds, so I imagine this car should be pretty similar. Top speed should be right around 130 miles an hour. And as this car sits, it weighs in at just over 3,300 pounds. It's around 50 to 80 pounds heavier versus the sedan, so this is definitely still on the lighter end of the segment. Now, after you close the heavy hood on the brand new K4 hatchback, let's go ahead and talk about the design of this vehicle. Now, just like the K4 sedan, the front fascia looks practically the same, and that's a good thing because this car is certainly a very stylish, sophisticated, and premium looking vehicle that looks a lot more like a mid-size car like their K5 sedan as opposed to a compact car. You can see this color is new and it's exclusive to the hatchback. It's called sparkling yellow, and just check out that beautiful metallic fleck as the sun hits it. It certainly looks fantastic along the lines and the wide body of the K4 hatchback. You can see it's got the new Kia logo, an interpretation of their latest Tiger Nose grille, and then you can see the headlights kind of take some cues from their flagship electric SUV, the EV9. It's got a LED daytime running light that's an amber illumination color. It's got the upgraded cube-style projector full LED headlights. You can see that's the LED low beam. The lower portion of those LEDs are the high beams. And then over here in the center, or I guess off to the side, is actually the LED fog light. The sparkling yellow contrasts nicely with the more aggressive front splitter and the gloss black and that kind of dark gray metallic front splitter. You can even see the intercooler poking behind the actual grille of the vehicle. And overall, it certainly gives you the vibe that you're looking at more of like a hot hatch, even though Kia still doesn't offer a true K4 GT. I would love to see this vehicle become equipped with the Elantra N's 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. Hopefully Kia will make that happen at some point and they could slap a manual or a dual clutch in the vehicle. Now, as you move around the side profile, you can really see the beautiful proportions of this car. In fact, whereas the K4 sedan is a little ungainly, especially from the rear, this model has the perfect little stubby appearance, and that's because Kia lopped off 11 inches off of the overall length at 174.4 with a 107.1 inch wheelbase, 72.4 inches wide. This has the same wheelbase and width as the sedan, But again, like I said, it's 11 inches shorter and it's all in the rear overhang. That makes this car look a lot more well proportioned. You can see the GT line includes these gloss black 18-inch wheels. If you go for just the regular GT, you'll have this design wheel, but with a contrast two-tone finish, which I actually think that wheel looks better. But you can see it's riding on a relatively wide 235 by 40 R18 Kumo all-season tire. The brake rotors measure 12 inches at the front, 11 inches at the rear. You do have an all-independent suspension, including at the rear, of course, and you get that independent rear suspension if you go for the GT line and up trims. You can see that wheel arch trim is in that gloss black along with the side sill. It contrasts really nicely with the sparkling yellow paint, and I'm just kind of obsessed with this color. It's a beautiful color in the sun. It's an extra $395. I'm just not sure if I could live with this color every day, but it's nice how Kia is offering a bright and bold color like this. You can see the mirrors are gloss black with integrated turn signals. You even have a 360 camera on this car. That's part of a tech package that you can add, which is kind of a rare feature to find in this class. And then Kia also equips this vehicle with an ultra wide sunroof. That's part of that technology package again. It's not a full pano, but it's definitely better versus a traditional sunroof you find on a lot of its rivals. Just like on the sedan, you can see it has the door handles for the rear hidden up in the D pillar, which kind of gives it more of a coupe-like look. And then as you back away from the car, you can really see that kind of almost wagon-like profile. In fact, Kia does offer a station wagon version of this car in other markets, so it's basically just even longer than this. But this car already looks like a station wagon to me. I just love the proportions of the car. I would like to see it in another color versus the sparkling yellow, but it certainly is a great halo color for the launch of this vehicle. Now, as you come over to the rear, you can see it has the same shape for the LED taillights as the front of the vehicle, as the headlights. And I also appreciate how Kia didn't skimp here. They gave you a full LED taillight design with LED turn signals. I would have preferred if the turn signals were amber in the illumination. And I also think that the LED taillight should have just gone all the way across, although I guess that's part of the whole trendy LED light bar theme that a lot of brands are going with. You can see the Kia logo fits nicely here. There is actually a little rear wiper that's hidden underneath that spoiler. This vehicle would look so much better if the windows were tinted, but I imagine some owners are going to do that in the aftermarket since they don't do it from the factory. And then you can see the rear bumper is just far more aggressive looking on the GT lines with that gloss black. The reverse light's actually down there below the license plate in the middle. And then sadly, Kia doesn't do any kind of exposed exhaust. The single exhaust is just kind of tucked away underneath the bumper. This would have looked a lot more mean if it had an actual exhaust, but maybe they're saving that for an actual GT as opposed to this GT line. Now, in terms of the cargo area, it's got a manual opening rear hatch, which is kind of the norm. You don't actually find a power hatchback in this class. And this is where the hatchback just has far more cargo space versus the sedan. Kia says you have around 22.2 cubic feet of storage space, which is a pretty nice increase versus the 15 cubic feet that you get in the sedan. If you look under the floor here, you can see there is a temporary spare with some additional storage. And this space is pretty comparable to the last generation the Kia Forte 5 from 2018. If you fold down the back seat, Kia says it expands the cargo to 59.1 cubic feet. 59.1 is definitely on the high end. Actually, I think it has more cargo space versus the Honda Civic hatchback, the Corolla hatchback, and the Mazda 3 hatchback. So if you're looking for a small, affordable, compact hatch with the most cargo space, you're going to be looking at the K4 hatchback, which honestly rivals the space that you'll find in some small SUVs. Now, Kia did a fantastic job with the exterior design of the K4 hatchback, but what about the interior? This is where I think a lot of you are also going to be pretty impressed, especially in this class of vehicle. Now, before we get inside, as you can see, this is the latest Intelligent Access key that Kia is using. It's a really cool detonator style key that feels really nice in your hands. It's a little bit large, but I love how the buttons are on the side. There's the typical lock, unlock, panic feature. There's no button to pop open the trunk, but you do get remote start from the fob, which is a nice touch. And in general, this key definitely feels like it belongs to a much more expensive vehicle. Now, as you approach the door handle, you can see it's got the traditional pull style. Touch that little rectangular area there. That's what's going to lock the door for you. This vehicle does not offer a power folding mirror feature. Most vehicles in the class don't. Touch the back of the door handle and that will unlock the door. Kia does not have a walkaway auto lock or unlock feature. Now, as you can see, the sparkling yellow exterior color of my test car is complemented by this beautiful black and white Syntex synthetic leather. So this is a faux leatherette material, but I have to say it looks and feels like the real thing. The seats are also heated and ventilated. So that's a feature that you don't typically find in the class. You won't find that in a Corolla or a Civic for sure. And I love the fact that the upper portion of the seat is white with the black two-tone with the GT line stitched into the actual seat back. The driver also gets a 10-way power adjustable seat, and you also get two-person memory. Again, features you don't typically find in this class. The passenger seat, however, is just a 6-way manual adjustable seat. You can see the door panel has a soft touch injection molded plastic. There's also that Syntex leather over here where your elbows would rest. Same thing here on the door panels. You can see the window controls, they are one touch up down for just the front windows. The rears are not one touch at all. You have some ambient LED lighting here, which is adjustable in 64 different colors. I think this car may be the only car in the segment that offers that. Down here in the lower portion, you can see it's hard touch plastic. You also have an upgraded Harman Kardon stereo system, which sounds really good if you guys are an audiophile. It's one of the best sounding stereos in this particular class. So overall, this definitely makes you feel like you're stepping into a much more expensive car. Now, stepping inside, you can see the K4 hatch has a pretty low step-in height, as you expect for a small car like this. As I shut the door has a really solid sounding thunk, which adds to that impression of quality. Now, once you're inside, as you can see, it certainly looks impressive with this big wall of screen here. But if you put your foot on the brake, push the start-stop button down here by the shifter, and you can hear this car has a pretty traditional starter noise, and that's because this is not a hybrid or a mild hybrid. This is where Kia is falling behind by not offering a hybrid option, and its fuel efficiency is lagging compared to its electrified rivals. But as you can see, this interior is definitely class leading. This is the nicest cabin, I believe, that you're gonna find in the segment. It's pretty much on par with some other rival like the Nissan Sentra, although the Sentra doesn't offer a hatchback variant here in the US. I mean, the only upscale feature it's missing is a head-up display. You typically don't find that, but you can see with this upper trim, you have a fully digital 12.3-inch driver's display with a 12.3-inch center display and a 5-inch display here for the GPS or for the climate control. So there's almost like 30 inches of total screen real estate here, which looks very impressive. And as you can also see, Kia has updated the software here where you can actually change the theme of the background here. I actually have it on Spider-Man. If you guys are, I guess, a Marvel's fan, that's a really cool feature where you can basically go into the screen layout here and you can choose between different display themes. I'm assuming you can basically download more and change them to your liking. You can see there's a Disney one. If you guys are a big fan of Disney, I'm sure there's also more. There's also more of the Marvel where you can go to an Avengers theme here, for example. I can even preview it and it shows you the different characters that'll show up for the icons. That's what the gauge display also looks like if you have it on here. So that's really cool. I've never seen this kind of feature before in any other car, and it's just great. Oh, look, there's even a Toy Story one. This is like pulling at my inner childhood heartstrings here. So that's really cool. Love the fact that Kia is offering that level of customization. I think it's just something that you can kind of smile about when you're in this car. Now, looking at the rest of this cabin, you can see the soft materials here carry over onto the door pane or onto the dashboard, where this is also a soft touch injection molded plastic. This is kind of like a matte textured plastic trim, which almost looks like a brushed aluminum trim, which is nice. You have traditional air vents, a big volume knob here, along with traditional hard buttons. You've got dual zone climate, which are traditional buttons as well. But the rest of your climate controls are located here, which can get a little bit blocked by the steering wheel. That's something I noticed when I'm driving, is I can't really see this unless I'm kind of looking over to the side. So keep that in mind. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's better than that display that switches between HVAC and audio that you'll find in some other Kia models. So I much prefer this versus that annoyance of a display there. You can see down here, you got your wireless phone charging pad, along with your 2 USB-C charging ports, your 12-volt power outlet there, nice additional storage. If I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see this model also comes with a 360 camera. A 360 camera is a feature that you don't typically find in this class with a top-down view. The quality and resolution of the graphics is also impressive. I can do a full perimeter scan here and I can pinch to zoom. So that's features that you all typically expect to find in a luxury brand. So keep that in mind. This is very impressive stuff that Kia is offering. And I forgot to mention here, you'll also find the heated and cooled seats, which are part of that technology package. And it looks like Kia added a heated steering wheel with 2 levels. That's something that I didn't have in the K4 sedan that I tested last year, which was also a GT line turbo. So it's nice to see Kia has added a heated steering wheel. It's going to come in handy when the temperature is below freezing out here. I also love the way the steering wheel looks. It's a flat bottom and a flat top design. Your drive mode selector is here. There's basically a normal or sport drive mode. You get paddles on the wheel as well to control the 8-speed auto. The wheel has a nice manual tilt telescoping where you can get a really comfortable driving position, so that's fantastic. The horn, it sounds pretty much as you expect. It doesn't have this puny, pathetic sounding horn like on the Toyota Corolla, for example. And then down here you can see there's an auto hold feature, your parking sensors. You can pull up your 360 camera from there. And I also love how there's a traditional shifter here with the manual mode here down here as well. If you don't want to use the paddles, you can see nice big cup holders, which you can also kind of stow them away to kind of create a really big storage area, which is nice. Padded center console area, along with a usable center console storage compartment. As you can see, the seats, they are comfortable and supportive, and the padding feels really nice. I find the seats to be quite easy to sit in for longer trips, and the heat and cooling function works well. This seat, however, doesn't have any adjustable lumbar. It's just a 6-way manual. Now, looking at the glove box, you can see it just unfortunately cheaply falls, but it's a bin style, not lined with felt. It offers additional storage, which is nice. You don't have an auto-dimming rearview mirror, but I think Kia will offer that as a dealer accessory if you want it. There's a woven material for the headliner here, in addition to having your LED map lighting. And then you can see the sunroof on the inside just looks like a traditional sunroof. It does tilt and opens up completely, just over obviously the 2 front seats, but it's nice how it opens up to vent air to let in a little bit more light, which is obviously a really nice touch. You can see the ambient lighting in there is kind of nice and kind of accented. It's same thing on the door panels. If you want to adjust the ambient lighting, you basically go into the setup here, you go into vehicle, go to lights, and you can really see here how this car offers really a lot of ambient lighting colors. You can kind of go into here and you can change to whatever color you'd like. So love this feature. It's not standard on all of the K4s. I think you have to go for the GT line to get it, but it's nice how Kia offers this kind of level of customization and features because it makes the cabin feel a lot more upscale and premium. But overall, the cabin has really nice materials, high build quality, good fit and finish. I didn't hear any squeaks and rattles. I think a lot of people who are, coming from a Corolla or a Civic, for example, are going to be quite impressed with this kind of grown-up premium ambiance that Kia is offering with the newest K4 sedan and hatchback model. But let's go ahead and hop into the back seat of the K4 hatch. And as you can see, the door handle is kind of cleverly hidden back here. And just like on the sedan, I do find that this little piece right here, it kind of sticks out a little too much. You kind of have to step back a little bit, otherwise it's going to kind of ram right into your thigh as you open the door, or it could also hit into another car door, so keep that in mind. It's a styling detail that I could have gone without. And as you can see, the backseat area, Kia says, offers best-in-class legroom thanks to that generous 107-inch long wheelbase. You can see the seats back here are covered in that same black and white Syntex. You can also fold this seat down if you want to create almost a completely flat load floor. The seat obviously doesn't recline, but you have to kind of go into the backseat area if you do want to recline that seat, so keep that in mind. I also noticed that kind of gets stuck when you open that. The seat belt gets stuck or caught in the actual latch. Now, getting back here, you can see Kia says you have around 38 inches of legroom, which 38 inches is on par with a lot of mid-size sedans. So this is practically my driving position. There's good foot space here. There is a hump, which is annoying because they don't offer all-wheel drive, so this is going to intrude on the middle passenger. I can sit back here and cross my legs and get comfortable. This is way more space than what you're going to find in the Corolla. It's also more space versus the Civic and the Nissan Sentra. You do have rear seat air vents back here, 2 USB-C charging ports, a little storage compartment here. Sadly, material quality are hard touch plastic, which isn't really nice to feel, but this is at least padded and padded leather right there, along with this nice feeling window control, more door pocket storage. And then if you fold this down, you can see there's an armrest with 2 cup holders. And you also have these adjustable head restraints. In terms of the headroom space, you can see at 5'7", I have maybe a solid 3 inches of additional clearance. So this is not bad. That sunroof obviously takes up space, but there's a little bit of a carve out here to give you a little bit more headroom. So overall, the back seat is certainly adult friendly. Again, Kia claims it's the best in class rear seat legroom, and I'm pretty inclined to agree. The only thing I would like to see is another storage pocket here and perhaps heated rear seats, especially considering it has a lot of other nice features. But in general, this is definitely nicer than a lot of its rivals. So here we are behind the wheel of the Kia K4 hatchback. As you guys know, I was a pretty big fan of the K4 sedan, loved the entire package that Kia threw at this vehicle, and I especially like the powertrain of this vehicle. Even though the Hyundai and Kia 1.6-liter Turbo 4 is starting to get a little long in the tooth, it's definitely still a great powertrain if you guys prefer something that's a little bit more, I guess, normal, a little bit more conventional. Love the fact that Kia uses an 8-speed conventional automatic. I don't love, however, how this vehicle is still not available with all-wheel drive. Front-wheel drive only means that if you live in an area like mine where there's snow, you may not necessarily want this vehicle, although in this class, the only vehicles with all-wheel drive is the Subaru Impreza and, of course, the Mazda 3. If you want all-wheel drive on a Corolla, you have to spend a lot more for the GR Corolla. But in general, the last K4 GT line turbo that I tested was a sedan. That model hit 60 in a pretty quick 6.55 seconds. So this model is a smidge heavier, but let's go ahead and see what we can get here. I have the car in its sport setting here. I have the traction stability control in its less restrictive mode. And let's go ahead and see what this hatchback model will do. We'll brake torque it. No wheel spin. A little buzzy at the higher revs, but it feels good. All right, we got 0 to 60 there in 6.93 seconds. 6.93 is surprisingly around 0.4 seconds slower versus the sedan that we tested around a few months ago. No, it was sometime last year. But still, 6.93 is a pretty respectable time. It is considerably off the pace, however, of the Honda Civic Sport Touring Hybrid hatchback that we tested just about a month ago. That model was really quick at 6.2 seconds, but still, 6.9 is not something to, complain about too much. This is going to be plenty of power for most people. And I think for those of you who prefer a more traditional geared transmission, you're going to really like this. Let's try another run here. This time I didn't brake torque it. Shifts it around 6,100 RPM. The 8-speed is a smooth transmission, 7.16 seconds there. So that's with it more slightly uphill. Again, it's not going to blow your mind away with like hot hatch performance, but to be honest, this time that it's getting used to be what a hot hatch from like 10 years ago would get. So this car definitely is begging for a GT version. I would love to see the Elantra N's 2-liter turbo with 286 horsepower with a dual clutch in this car, because as I start pushing this car around corners, I'm noticing that it feels really sporty. It feels planted. It feels very direct. It actually feels like it could handle a lot more power, and it feels like the suspension is already tuned really nicely for that better handling. The steering in this car is quick, it's precise, it offers a decent amount of feedback. The suspension also stays pretty firm as I turn the wheel. It's very sharp. The car feels like it's got the makings here of a hot hatch. It feels like a warm hot hatch, or a lukewarm hatch, basically. It just needs a little bit more spice to get it up to that next level. But in general, I think for those of you who haven't driven a Kia product for a long time, you're going to be surprised at how well this handles. This feels very comparable to the last Honda Civic hatchback that I tested. The ride quality also remains pretty agreeable, even though this model has big 18-inch wheels on a 235 width tire. The grip is good, not much wheel spin, surprisingly. And it doesn't beat you up in terms of the ride. The all-independent suspension obviously helps. That's something that the new Mazda 3 does not have, is an independent rear suspension. But in general, I think those of you who haven't driven a car like this in a while, you'll be surprised. Now, one wheel peel there because of the the traction control was off, and that's where it struggles a little bit for traction. But still, that was kind of funny, actually. I wasn't expecting that. I would love to see this car with a manual transmission as well. Sadly, of course, the only manual in this class, if you want it, I believe, is the Mazda 3. That still offers a manual. But this 8-speed is a smooth transmission. It's perfectly matched, I think, for the engine's power band, and it's just better in everyday usage versus a dual clutch, versus the old 7-speed dual clutch that Hyundai and Kia used to put with this engine. Let's try one more run here. Surprised I can brake torque it and it doesn't break traction. That's impressive. 6.88 seconds there, so pretty consistently 6.9 seconds. So just know that the hatch is around 0.4 seconds slower than the sedan. I don't know why. Maybe the sedan I tested a year ago was just extra quick, extra spicy, but still, this is going to be plenty of power for most people. And then when you're just driving the car normally, I'll take it out of its sport mode here. I definitely noticed in sport, the steering gets heavier and the transmission is it's more willing to hold gears. You put it into normal and it automatically will upshift a lot faster to get you better gas mileage, but this is a really easy car to live with and drive. Again, it's got a smooth 8-speed auto that is the perfect, I think, partner for this turbo engine. The turbo engine, I don't always love the sounds it makes. It's only when you start pushing it past like 5,000 RPM do you really start to feel the buzziness. You feel a vibration come through the pedals, through the steering wheel, and that's not really pleasant, but in everyday driving, the engine, I think, it feels perfectly normal. Visibility in this car also is good. I can see out of the front and the sides really easily. The view out of the back also is not hateful. No digital camera rearview mirror, but you do have that blind view camera. So if I signal left or signal right, it shows me what's in my blind spot. Now that feature is exclusive to the GT Line Turbo when you go for that technology package. In terms of quietness as well, I didn't hear as much road noise as I thought I would considering the class of vehicle. What you hear mostly is just the engine buzz when you're really pushing the car, but surprisingly not much road or wind noise. So Kia did a good job with isolation in this car, making it more road trip worthy. Obviously the seats also are comfortable, supportive. They have decent lateral support, so I'm not flailing around too much in my seat as I'm driving this thing a little more aggressively in corners. And I didn't hear any squeaks and rattles in this interior, so it feels really well made. It feels very buttoned down. It feels almost German in the way it handles. So I'm really impressed with the overall driving dynamics. It drives just as good as the sedan. It just feels a little bit more buttoned down. It feels a little bit smaller because it is shorter, which I appreciate. And then in terms of the fuel efficiency, in my weeks for the testing, it's been a mixture of like below freezing to a much nicer day today. It's almost 50 degrees today. Average fuel economy I've been getting is around 29 miles to the gallon in mixed driving, which is honestly not bad. Now, obviously, it's going to be around 10 to 15 miles per gallon less versus a lot of its hybrid competitors, but still just under 30 and mostly city driving is not bad considering this is a 180 horsepower turbo 4 with an 8-speed auto. With its 12.5 gallon fuel tank, I got around 350 miles of range on a full tank. That's on regular gas. Again, the Civic Hybrid will easily do 450 to 500 miles, so keep that in mind. But still, this is a pretty cheap car to fill up. It's a cheap car to live with. And if you prefer a turbo with a conventional automatic, this is one of the few options out there because the Mazda 3 offers a turbo, but it's considerably more expensive, considerably more powerful as well. And that's also, I also noticed that the Mazda 3's 2.5 turbo is a lot more thirsty, so kind of keep that in mind. But overall, I'm impressed. I really liked the K4 sedan when I drove it last year. The hatch basically makes everything better. It's more nimble, it looks better, it's more practical, it's still very refined, it's full of all the latest tech. And really, this car is a hybrid powertrain and all-wheel drive away from being the runaway leader in the segment for me. But I mean, those are features that, may or may not be important to you depending on how you drive and what kind of area you live in if you need the all-wheel drive traction. But in general, if you guys are considering the K4, the hatchback model is definitely the one to get. So I'd be surprised to see what the take rate ends up being for Kia after a full year of sales of both the hatch and the sedan on the market. So last year in America, Kia managed to sell a little over 140,000 K4 sedans. Remember, that number is achieved before the hatchback even came into play, and that means that the K4 nameplate is Kia's second best-selling model, right behind, of course, their top seller, the Kia Sportage, a compact SUV. In fact, this vehicle's sales were kind of stepping on the toes almost for the Hyundai Elantra. It's its sister vehicle that shares the same platform. Hyundai only did around 148,000 units, so personally, I actually think that the K4 may eventually surpass the Elantra. I much prefer the design, the space, the technology of this vehicle, and of course it shares the same powertrains. This is kind of where I want Kia to offer a full-on GT version, because after spending a full week with the GT line model, as you guys saw, just like on the K4 sedan, this vehicle has excellent driving dynamics. It has a refined ride that feels more like a mid-size car as opposed to a compact, and it also delivers sportier handling via its sharp steering, its nicely tuned suspension that doesn't compromise the ride quality, and of course an interior that feels upscale, it feels modern, and it also has a lot of the latest tech features. It feels like, again, you're driving around in a Kia K5 as opposed to a K4. I think that's the reason why the K4 continues to do so well for Kia. So now that they have the addition of this hatchback model, which has basically the same size rear seat and way more cargo space, I'm happy to report that I personally view this vehicle as my favorite of all the compact hatchbacks. Really, what would make it perfect for me is if Kia offered all-wheel drive and if they offered a hybrid powertrain, because if you're looking for a conventional driving vehicle in this segment, the 8-speed automatic, that's a torque converter automatic with that turbo, certainly will deliver the performance. 0 to 60 happens in just under 7 seconds, which is going to be great for most people. And while it doesn't quite deliver the fuel efficiency of the Honda Civic, I much prefer the infotainment system, the interior, the extra space that you got with this car. And that's kind of where the Civic is starting to fall behind, because the technology in the Civic just isn't as good, even though the powertrain in the Honda is the superior powertrain in terms of fuel efficiency and in terms of acceleration. I happily would probably end up trading a little bit of that just to get the much nicer car, and that's what the Kia K4 delivers. So keep in mind, Kia obviously is probably going to be working on some upgrades for this vehicle at some point, but I'm just hoping that they're going to give us a full-on GT version with either a manual or dual clutch, because it's certainly begging for that. Now, if you're interested in getting your hands on the latest Kia K4 hatchback, they are now at dealership showrooms, and that's the beauty about the hatchback, is it's not that much more expensive than the sedan. In fact, on paper, it looks like the hatchback is $2,700 more. However, keep in mind, there is no base LX or LXS trim on this vehicle. It starts at the EX trim at just under $25,000. That's only about $500 more versus the K4 sedan in the EX trim level, so $24,990. Step it up to the GT line, however, and it's going to cost you a couple $1,000s more. The turbo version that I'm showing you here starts at around another $3,000 more at just under $29,000 with that technology package that my test car has and the sparkling yellow paint and destination. You're looking at an as tested price of just over $32,000, so around $32,500. I know that sounds like a lot of money, but remember, the last Civic hatchback Sport Touring that I tested, which was a hybrid, was around $35,000. A Mazda 3 Turbo, of course, which has significant more power, is around $39,000. Then, of course, there's also the Corolla hatchback. But me personally, I think the Corolla is definitely due for a redesign. It's a lot smaller on the inside. The interior feels cramped. And Toyota is preparing to show us a new version. Corollas can also be topping out at around the mid $30,000 range as well. So Kia, again, offers a lot of technology, performance, space, efficiency, and style at a price tag that significantly undercuts its rivals by several thousands of dollars. And that's personally why the new K4 hatchback has become my favorite vehicle, just as long as you don't need all-wheel drive or you don't need the extra efficiency of a hybrid powertrain. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full detailed overview on the brand new 2026 Kia K4 hatchback in this GT line turbo trim. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.